This donghua begins by showing two boys, 15 and 18-year-old named Chang Shang and Yu Ren, who live in a rural area with their male teacher, a Taoist named Ji. Since they were children, Yu Ren and Chang Shang had learned a lot about martial arts and spiritual knowledge from the various secret scrolls given by their teacher. That was why they had mastered various martial arts and possessed quite high spiritual abilities. One day, when Chang Shang was looking for some food in the forest, he accidentally slipped and fell off a cliff, causing him to fall unconscious. Luckily, Yu Ren managed to find him and immediately took him to the hermitage, so that Ji could treat him. When Chang Shang regained consciousness, Ji told him that the meridians in his body had broken into 9 parts, which would make Chang Shang's life no more than 20 years old. Hearing this, he looked so shocked and sad that he intended to change his destiny against the will of the sky god. On the next day, Chang Shang decided to say goodbye to Yu Ren and his teacher, because he was going to find a warrior college to learn to become a spiritual teacher so he could fight against the sky god. Arriving in a big city, Chang Shang then went to meet the divine messenger general because he wanted to annul his marriage with a girl named Zhu Yorong. Chang Shang thought that with his current health condition, he was not worthy enough to be able to live together with her. However, after Chang Shang met Yorong's mother, he was insulted by Yorong's mother by saying that Chang Shang's knowledge was far inferior to that of her daughter. Hearing this, an angry Chang Shang decided to cancel his intention and left with the marriage agreement between him and Yorong. While in front of the gate, one of Yorong's servants also urged Chang Shang to cancel the marriage because Yorong would be betrothed to a young man named Quishan Jun from the southern region. That night, while Chang Shang was resting at an inn, he was suddenly attacked by an assassin sent by a divine general to steal the marriage certificate from his hands. Fortunately, a young man named Tong Tong came to help him to defeat the assassin, and from that meeting, their friendship began. The next day, Chang Shang and Tong Tong tried to enroll in a Heavenly Academy college by taking the written test. Unfortunately, even though Chang Shang managed to get a perfect score on the exam, the Heavenly Academy refused to accept him into their college because the divine generals had forbidden them to accept Chang Shang. Chang Shang also tried to enroll in all the colleges in the city, but all the academies refused on the direct orders of the divine generals. After failing to enroll in various places, he decided to enroll in the Orthodox Academy, which had long been abandoned due to a bloody battle several years ago. Thanks to a letter of recommendation from a royal woman named Mo Yu, Chang Shang was accepted to become a teacher at the Orthodox Academy. In the evening, Chang Shang meditated to increase his spiritual strength in the hope that he could reach the Star of Life, which became his symbol of destiny so that he could change his fate. But unfortunately, his spiritual power was still not enough to perform the ritual, and he still had to practice more. Outside the Orthodox Academy, a princess named Luo Luo was suddenly attacked by a young man named Moe, resulting in a fierce fight between the two of them. Luo Luo seemed to have a hard time dealing with Moe because he had a very fast barrier and disappearance move. Fortunately, when she was almost killed by him, Chang Shang appeared in time and immediately helped Luo Luo defeat him. The next day, Luo Luo went to see Chang Shang at the Orthodox Academy to apply as Chang Shang's disciple. At first, he refused her request, but after seeing Luo Luo's persistence, he finally accepted her as his disciple. A few days later, Chang Shang also started training Luo Luo because their academy would face another academy in an event called Qing Tong Yang. On the night that Qing Tong Yang's event was held, they came to the royal palace to represent the Orthodox Academy. In the middle of the event, a young man named Tian Hai Yan who was the nephew of a divine general, suddenly caused a stir by challenging all the participants in the venue. One of the male participants from the Star Fetch Academy named Xuan Yan Po also volunteered to fight against Yan. Unfortunately, Yan Po lost the fight after sustaining serious enough injuries that he had to leave the event. After that fight, Yan started insulting the Orthodox Academy in front of Chang Shang, so Luo Luo, who didn't accept it, immediately beat Yan until he was unconscious. Seeing the family of the royal generals being humiliated, a bodyguard named Master Cho felt angry and intended to beat her. Luckily, the head of the Heavenly Academy had arrived first and prevented the fight from becoming a bigger mess. The next day, Chang Shang and Luo Luo went to the Star Retrieval Academy to visit Yan Po. But when they arrived there, the academy guard said that Yan Po had withdrawn from the academy because the meridians in his hands were badly damaged. Chang Shang and Luo Luo also try to find Yan Po in the middle of the market and persuade him to come with them to the Orthodox Academy. After Yan Po accepted the offer, Chang Shang started treating his hand using acupuncture techniques so that Yan Po's hand could function as before. In the evening, when Chang Shang, Luo Luo, and Yan Po were enjoying snacks at a market, they saw a group from the elite of the southern country who came to the city. After Chang Shang found out that the group was Quishan Jun's party who wanted to propose to Yorong, Chang Shang immediately rushed to the divine general's place to stop the marriage. However, when he came through the secret passage that was connected to the divine general's palace pool, he was blocked by a giant dragon. Chang Shang also had no other choice but to fight against the dragon, even though his condition was still not good enough. In the middle of the fight, Chang Shang remembered a special spell he had learned from his teacher and used it so he could tame the dragon. Upon arriving at the Divine General's place, Chang Shang immediately interrupted the event and informed him of the marriage agreement between him and Yurong. Hearing that, one of the Divine General's men attacked Chang Shang, but Tong Tong and Luo Luo, who had arrived at the place, immediately blocked the attack. After Shan Jun's brother, Gohan Si, found out that Luo Luo was the daughter of a Western empress, he immediately stopped the fight. Gohan then said that the decision on the marriage should be determined by Yurong herself, not through an arranged marriage or a marriage agreement, so he suggested that they ask her this directly. A few moments later, there was a crane carrying a message, and Yurong said that she rejected her arranged marriage with Shan Jun and preferred to continue her marriage with Chang Sheng. After hearing her decision, even the elite group from the south had no other choice but to accept the decision and return to where they came from. The next day after Chang Sheng returned to the Orthodox Palace, Chang Sheng received a letter from Luo Luo, saying that she would stay for a while in the Li Palace because her identity was known. Shortly after, a monster from the mountains suddenly appeared in the hall of the Orthodox Academy and launched an attack on that place. Yan Po and Tong Tong, who have now joined the Orthodox Academy, begin to fight and defeat the monster. After successfully getting rid of the monster, a young man named Sen Sui and a general named Fadian came to the academy and challenged Chang Sheng to a fight. It turned out that the two of them were emissaries of a general from the Tianhai family named Cheng Wu, who intended to destroy the Orthodox Academy, and it was discovered that Cheng Wu's general was also cooperating with the Divine General. When Chang Sheng was about to fight Sen Sui and Fadian, one of Luo Luo's bodyguards named Jin Luyu came to help Chang Sheng to defeat them. But just as the battle was about to begin, a prince of the Northern Kingdom who happened to be passing by immediately stopped the fight. When Chang Sheng returned to his room, he was surprised by the arrival of Mo Yu, who was already in his room. Mo Yu then handed him a letter from Yurong, which contained a message that Yurong wished to annul their marriage. But Chang Sheng didn't believe that right away because he was sure that she would definitely meet him in person if she wanted to deliver such an important message. After the attack incident at the previous Orthodox Academy, Chang Sheng and the others had to again face various disturbances, such as swordsmen about to infiltrate the academy, ghosts appearing from inside trees, and magical lions being controlled by a black-robed youth. The next day, Chang Sheng made some elixirs for Tong Tong and Luo Luo so that they could increase their internal strength before the grand test took place. When Chang Sheng handed the elixir to Luo Luo in the Li Palace, two elders in the Li Palace, Pope and Mei Li Sha, looked impressed and admired Chang Sheng's abilities. That afternoon, Chang Sheng was discussing with Yan Po and Tong Tong about how they could pass the grand exam and take first place. In the middle of the conversation, Chang Sheng again remembered his goal to change his destiny, so he must immediately master Shu Xing's moves to change his star of life. In the evening, when Chang Sheng was looking for ingredients to make herbal concoctions in the forest, he met a goat sent by Mo Yu. The goat then directs him to a woman who informs him of the location of the black dragon in a well, which the dragon can help Chang Sheng gain control of Shu Xing. The next day, Chang Sheng went to an old well that the woman he met last night told him about. He then plunged into the well and finally met a giant black dragon. After meeting the black dragon, he expressed his intention to ask for help so that the dragon could lend him some strength so he could master Shu Xing's moves. However, because the dragon still could not trust him, the dragon refused to help Chang Sheng, so he decided to try with his own abilities. Initially, Chang Sheng managed to find his star of life, which became a symbol of his destiny. But not long after that, he was suddenly in pain and was bleeding profusely. A black dragon who saw the incident began to sympathize with him, so she decided to give Chang Sheng some of her power. Sometime later, Chang Sheng woke up and found himself outside the well with Mo Yu's goat. The next day, Chang Sheng and the others seemed to be busy practicing, when a priest named Xiu came and gave them various documents related to the grand exam that would be held in 10 days. Not only groups from Orthodox academies, students from other academies also started training hard so that they could pass the grand exam well. A few days later, the grand exam finally started, and all the participants from various academies, including Chang Sheng and Luo Luo, also attended the exam. The first test they have to pass is a written test, where all participants must complete a blank scroll with various spiritual knowledge they have. In the written exam, Chang Sheng and Gohan managed to solve all the exam questions perfectly. After that, all the participants who passed the first exam began to gather at the location of the next exam, where they had to get through a very complicated labyrinth. Fortunately, even though they were blocked by some of the other participants who were cheating, Chang Sheng and the other members of the Orthodox Academy managed to pass the labyrinth exam well. In the next test, all participants were assigned to pass through a river that had a very fast current without using a boat. Luo Luo used the ultimate throwing technique so she could throw Yan Po across the river, while Tong Tong used a special technique of magic bridge to cross the river. After that, Chang Shang crossed the river with the help of the crane sent by Yorong. Seeing this, the higher-ups who hated Orthodox academies seemed annoyed with Chang Shang's success in passing the grand exam. On the second day of the grand exam, all the participants gathered in the Li Palace to fight each other in a one-on-one duel battle to determine the ranking of the participants. In the first round, Chang Shang fought against Li Chongsong and won the fight by a landslide. Yan Po and Luo Luo also made it through the first round well, but unfortunately, Tong Tong had to fail in the duel against a male participant named Ling Dan. In the second round, Chang Shang had to fight against one of the strongest male participants named Huang Guang, who had tried to thwart Chang Shang in the previous exam. Although at first Chang Shang seemed to have difficulty dealing with Huang Guang's consecutive attacks, in the end, Chang Shang managed to win the battle with the power of the black dragon he had. After previously Tong Tong failed in the first round, Yan Po also had to fail in the second round because he chose to resign when facing Gohan. Meanwhile, Luo Luo managed to win the second round of battle after her opponent, Sen Sui, offered victory to Luo Luo on the condition that she would repay his kindness in the future. In the third round of duel battles, Chang Shang had to face off against one of the best students of the Heavenly Academy, who had the ability to wield an extremely formidable sword. Chang Shang even fell unconscious before he finally got back up with much greater spiritual power to defeat the young man. Before the final round of battle, Chang Shang received news from Tong Tong that a participant named Zhe Shu, who was supposed to be fighting Chang Shang, had withdrawn from the fight. It turned out that earlier, Tong Tong had met Zhe Shu secretly and given him some money to side with them. As a result, Chang Shang made it into the final round and had to fight Gohan in a one-on-one duel. The battle between Chang Shang and Gohan was very fierce because both of them had very great abilities and mastered various special techniques. But in the end, Chang Shang managed to defeat him with the soul-cleansing technique he had previously mastered. On the following day, the Grand Examination Committee began announcing the participants who had successfully passed the first round of the Grand Examination. For all the hard work Chang Shang did, he was finally crowned as the examinee who managed to rank first. All the examinees were then surprised by the sudden appearance of the Pope and presented Chang Shang with a golden crown. The next night, Chang Shang went to a sacred pavilion to change his destiny. When he entered the pavilion, he saw various photos of the warriors who had contributed to the founding of the Zhao dynasty. Behind one of the photos, Chang Shang found a secret safe deposit box that contained a book written by a person named Wang Jisei. When he opened the book, he managed to communicate with a part of Wang Jisei's soul and immediately asked about a way to change destiny. Wang Jisei then told about an incident in the past when a general named Taizu managed to carry out a ritual that changed his destiny so that he could seize the power of the Zhao dynasty. But his reign did not last long after Taizu's son, Taizong, carried out a coup and overthrew Taizu's power. After Taizong became an emperor, Emperor Taizong ordered Wang Jisei to become a warlord to fight against the demon clan that had been colonizing mankind. Wang Jisei then explained that Emperor Taizong's success in changing the destiny of mankind was born solely from the choices the emperor made, not from the ritual of changing destiny. The next day Chang Shang went to the Tianzhu Ling monument with Tong Tong and the others to take the next round of grand exams. Along the way, Chang Shang was still thinking about what Wang Jisei said and didn't notice that a pair of mysterious eyes were secretly watching him. When they arrived at the Tianzhu Ling monument, all participants were greeted by the star-picking attendant supervising all the participants during the exam. As the exam started, all the participants started rushing towards the location of each stone inscription which they had to understand well. Surprisingly, Chang Shang chose to take a walk around and told Tong Tong to quickly study the monument. The pair of magical eyes that had previously been watching him reappeared and kept an eye on Chang Shang throughout the exam. It turned out that the eyes were sent by a member of the demon clan named Ba Po on orders from several high-ranking royals who wanted to spy on him. The generals looked surprised and astonished after learning that Chang Shang was not trying to understand the inscription and was just wandering around enjoying the surrounding scenery. When Chang Shang was walking around in the forest area, Zhe Shu suddenly approached him and asked Chang Shang for help to give him a potion because the meridians in his body had been badly damaged. That night, Chang Shang, Zhe Shu, and Tong Tong decided to rest at an inn owned by a man named Xun Mei, who was known to have spent 37 years in that place to be able to surpass the strength of his brother Wang Po. Hearing this, they advised him to leave because what Xun Mei did there was a waste of time. In anger, Xun Mei rejected the suggestion and went straight to the top of the monument tower to prove his strength in front of Wang Po. As a result, Xun Mei also has to fight against the guardian of the monument tower named Han Qi, who is one of the strongest guardians on the continent. Unfortunately, he still couldn't beat Han Qi's strength and had to fall with many injuries. In that condition, Xun Mei then asked Chang Shang to take him out of the tower so he could meet Wang Po. After that incident, Chang Shang finally realized that he was too focused on changing his destiny that he forgot important things that he should have done. Therefore, he promised himself that he would always try to follow his heart or his instincts. That night, Chang Shang began to go to the first inscription to understand the contents of the inscription, and began to think of ways to be able to master the contents. Then, Chang Shang went to the second inscription with Gohan, who also happened to have mastered the knowledge of the first inscription. But just as Chang Shang was about to understand the inscription using conventional methods, a male servant named Jijin started insulting and harassing him. It turns out that Jijin had previously been paid by the royal generals to swindle attention and interfere with Chang Shang's exams. After that, just as Chang Shang and Gohan were about to return to the inn, Priest Shu came over to Chang Shang to say something. The next day, for some reason, Chang Shang suddenly behaved strangely by choosing to cultivate crops instead of understanding inscriptions like the other examinees. Upon learning of his actions, the generals looked satisfied because they thought that they had succeeded in breaking Chang Shang's attention. A week had passed, and Chang Shang was still spending his time farming instead of understanding the inscriptions. This made the royal generals even more convinced that they had succeeded in thwarting his test. But they didn't realize that one day before the end of the exam, Chang Shang immediately understood every inscription on the monument. When Chang Shang met Gohan, Chang Shang then explained that he deliberately did that because there were several people watching him secretly. Turns out, he had learned from Priest Shu that the royal generals had sent demon eyes to watch over him during the exams. However, when Chang Shang arrived at the last stele, he found that it had been damaged. But thanks to the knowledge he gathered from the previous 9 inscriptions, he was finally able to understand the contents and mastered all the inscriptions of the Tianzhu Ling monument. On the following day, Chang Shang, as the first disciple to master all the inscriptions, finally passed the test well and was allowed to go to the small continent called Zhongyuan. On the way to the Zhongyuan continent, Chang Shang would be accompanied by Yan Po and Zhe Shu, who had previously been paid by Tong Tong to accompany Chang Shang. Before leaving, the Pope met Chang Shang and told him the reason for helping Chang Shang all this time. He said that Taoist Ji was actually his brother-in-law, and after learning that Chang Shang was his disciple, he felt that he should take care of Chang Shang. In addition, he also appointed Chang Shang as Dean of the Orthodox Academy to represent the Li Palace in the grand examination of the Zhongyuan continent. On the other hand, the Divine Empress was seen secretly meeting the Black Dragon and making a secret pact with the Black Dragon. The Divine Empress promised that she would free her from the well if the Black Dragon was willing to seek information about Chang Shang's true identity. At first, the Black Dragon seemed hesitant to do so, but in the end, she had no other choice because the Divine Empress had already taken one of her dragon souls to spy on Chang Shang. The night before the journey to the Zhongyuan continent, Chang Shang received a shipment of the legendary yellow umbrella weapon from Tong Tong. The next morning, all the examinees began to depart for the Zhongyuan continent to pass the next great test. After the examinees arrived on the Zhongyuan continent, Mei Li Sha began to announce the 3 important rules of this exam. All participants are allowed to take various weapons on the continent and are allowed to fight each other. However, the organizers strictly forbade killing in that place and provided all participants with a teleportation rope that allowed participants to exit the continent directly. When all the examinees had entered the continent, a young man nicknamed Black Cloak began to carry out his evil plan by locking the Zhongyuan gates. It turned out that Black Cloak intended to kill Zhe Shu, Yorong, and a male participant named Shi Jian. Fortunately, there is a strong warrior named Su Li who knows the Black Cloak's plan and intends to stop him. As a result, there was a fierce battle between them on the snow mountain. Meanwhile, just as Zhe Shu and Chang Shang were about to head to the Sword Lake to look for some weapons, they were startled by a scream from another direction. It turned out that the voice came from 2 girl warriors who had just been attacked by 2 youths from another academy, who wanted to snatch magic weapons from the 2 girls. Before they could continue their fight, a male participant named Liang Xiao Xiao suddenly appeared and attacked one of the youths. As a result, the young man was seriously injured and Chang Shang advised them to leave the Zhongyuan continent. But when he set fire to the teleportation rope, it didn't work and they failed to teleport. The other participants faced the same problem, where they failed to teleport out of the Zhongyuan continent. In the afternoon, a group of healers from the 13th Division appeared to treat the participants who had been injured during the fight. Yorong also helped the healers treat the participants using the Holy Light technique. After Chang Shang and Zhe Shu investigated what was going on in that place, Chang Shang had just realized that the gates of the Zhongyuan continent had been locked, and he guessed that all of this was Black Cloak's doing. In the evening, Chang Shang and Zhe Shu began to tour all areas of the continent to treat injured participants using acupuncture techniques. The next day, trouble again occurred when a great teacher named Fei was found dead due to exposure to a poison. The participants also suspected that there was a demon clan disguised among them and had poisoned Fei to death to cause chaos. After the incident happened, Zhe Shu and Chang Shang tried to investigate what had actually happened in that place. Then, when the two of them were looking for weapons in the Lake of Swords, they found a portal of light in the river that led them to a very beautiful lake elsewhere. At the lake, Chang Shang met a girl who was taking a bath, who accidentally slipped and fell into the river. This donghua continues the story when Chang Shang and Zhe Shu meet a woman in the middle of the lake who turns out to be a demon. Soon after, a pair of demons approached them and offered to exchange hostages. The demon couple named Liu Wan and Tang Xiaobin was one of the generals of the demon clan who had just captured a female student who was also a participant in the grand exam. However, Chang Shang did not immediately believe the pair of demons because the hostage could be a demon in disguise. While Zhe Shu was negotiating with the demon couple, Chang Shang secretly asked the Black Dragon to send help. To convince Chang Shang that the hostage was really a human, Liu Wan immediately tore another arm of the girl and cut off her arm. Not long after, a female major examiner named Qi Jian came along with a male student named Liang Xiao, who appeared to help Chang Shang and Zhe Shu. Strangely, Liang Xiao injured Qi Jian by stabbing her body with a sword because it turned out that he had conspired with the demons to kill them. Chang Shang immediately ordered Zhe Shu to go to a safe place while he would fight against Liang Xiao and the two female demons. Carrying Qi Jian on his back, Zhe Shu ran as fast as possible to escape from Liu Wan and Tang Xiaobin's pursuit. Fortunately, when they entered the area of the Imperata grass, the pair of demons stopped chasing them. The demon couple had known that no one would ever be able to survive after entering that prairie region, so they were sure that Zhe Shu and Qi Jian would also experience the same thing. On the other hand, the Black Dragon was still trying to find help until she finally met Shu Yurong, walking up the hill. Just as the Black Dragon was about to approach Shu Yurong, she was caught in an illusion created by the Liar Witch. She then burned the surroundings of the hill with her phoenix blood, which could turn into a sea of fire. Meanwhile, Black Cloak began summoning several demon clan generals to help him defeat Su Li. Black Cloak tried to provoke him by saying that at this time, the demon lord had sent her Princess Nanke to kill Shu Yurong and Qi Jian, his only daughter. Black Cloak then explained that he did all of that on the orders of a child of the person Su Li had killed. Knowing that Black Cloak had threatened his daughter's safety, he immediately launched an attack on Black Cloak. Back to Chang Shang, who still had to fight with Liang Xiao and the two demon girls who turned out to be the wings of Princess Nanke. After quite a fierce battle, Chang Shang started to run out of energy, so he decided to escape by throwing a blood-stained cloth that could make the two demon girls trapped in an illusion. At the same time, the fierce battle between Princess Nanke and Shu Yurong had begun. With Shu Yurong's golden bow attack, she managed to break the illusory barrier created by the Liar Witch so that the Black Dragon could escape the illusion's trap. She was so close to defeating Princess Nanke, but because of the help of the Liar Witch, Princess Nanke had already stabbed the poison sword into her body. As a result, Shu Yurong lost the fight and immediately fell off the cliff. Fortunately, with a little help from the Divine Empress, Shu Yurong could survive death and turn into a phoenix so that she could escape to a safer place. On the way, she saw Chang Shang, who had fallen unconscious on the river bank, so she took the initiative to bring him. At this moment, she still didn't recognize his identity and didn't realize that he was the fiancé the God Emperor had betrothed. Due to the poison in Shu Yurong's body, she was unable to fly for too long, and she was also unable to treat Chang Shang with her healing arts. The next day, she limped along while pulling Chang Shang's body, which was still unconscious, into the forest. On the way, Shu Yurong met an old man named Bai Hai, who claimed to want to help them. Fortunately, she realized that the old geezer also had malicious intentions toward them, so she decided to escape to a cave with Chang Shang. However, as it turned out, Bai Hai managed to find their hiding place and attacked her so he could suck the phoenix blood in her body. Fortunately, Chang Shang regained consciousness so he could save Shu Yurong from Bai Hai's attack. Shortly after Bai Hai sucked her blood, he suddenly fell helplessly due to Princess Nanke's sword poison that had spread over her body. At that moment, Chang Shang didn't realize that Shu Yurong was his fiancée whom the Divine Emperor had betrothed because they had never met in person. Just as she was about to get out of the cave, Shu Yurong suddenly fell unconscious because the poison in her body had dispersed, and her energy had also been depleted. Chang Shang carried Shu Yurong and started to continue his journey to find a way out of Zhou Yuan's world. Shortly after they left, Princess Nanke, apparently still after Shu Yurong, looked annoyed that she was still alive and had the strength to fight. Meanwhile, Zhe Shu was trying to treat the wounds on Qi Jian's body with the medicine that Chang Shang had given him. In a semi-conscious state, she was still wondering about Liang Xiao conspiring with the demon clan and intending to kill her. After she fell asleep, Zhe Shu tried to treat the stab wound in her stomach with the rest of his medicine. On the other hand, when Princess Nanke managed to find Chang Shang and Shu Yurong, she asked him to hand Shu Yurong over to her. However, he refused to do so because he realized Princess Nanke intended to do bad things to Shu Yurong. He Hearing this, Princess Nanke immediately attacked the two of them with magic peacock feathers. Fortunately, Chang Shang could protect himself, and Shu Yorong with the golden yellow umbrella Tong Tong had once given him and used the opportunity to escape into the grasslands. While resting, Chang Shang tried to check Shu Yorong's health condition and found that she was currently in a fairly critical condition. Fortunately, to increase the energy in her body, Chang Shang tried to drain some of the blood from the water snake into her body. At the same time, Zhe Shu and Qi Jian resumed their journey to find a safe place to escape the beast's attacks. That night, Shu Yorong and Chang Shang decided to take turns sleeping to protect each other from being attacked by beasts or other demons. The next morning, he picked her up again and took her to the sword pool because they might find a way out there. After following the white path and going through quite a long journey, they then rested in an old temple that had been abandoned for a long time. While inside the temple, Chang Shang started to invite Shu Yorong to get acquainted. But strangely, they both chose to hide their real names and introduce themselves with fake names. The next day when Princess Nanke and her men arrived at the old temple, Chang Shang and Shu Yorong had already left the temple. She uses a magic badge that can control wild animals so that she can find Shu Yorong's whereabouts. She guessed that they were most likely heading towards Zhou Dufu's tomb and sword pool. In the evening, after a long and snowy journey, Chang Shang and Shu Yorong returned to rest at a shrine to recharge their energies. In front of a warm bonfire, they began to talk about their respective goals in life, and slowly the relationship between them grew closer. The next day, the two of them continued their journey to the sword pool while occasionally enjoying the beautiful natural scenery in that world. Unexpectedly, the long journey took them to Zhou Dufu's tomb, so they also took the opportunity to pay their last respects and explore the tomb. After finding a medicine room, Chang Shang gave Shu Yorong a blood booster and asked her to rest for a while. Not long after, he realized that the blood-enhancing medicine was still ineffective at neutralizing the poison in her body. Even after Chang Shang tried the acupuncture technique on her neck, her body condition was still not stable. Therefore, he decided to give her a spit of his blood to energize her body. Surprisingly, when Shu Yorong smelled his blood, she felt dizzy and immediately fell unconscious. Meanwhile, Princess Nanke was confused by the strange behavior of the beast that she had previously controlled with a magic badge. It turned out that the beasts had smelled the scent of fresh blood from Chang Shang, so they all flocked to Zhou Dufu's tomb. At the same time, Shu Yorong, who had woken up, thanked Chang Shang for being kind enough to give her blood. Not long after, they saw a blue light flashing over Zhou Dufu's meal, which miraculously opened Zhou Dufu's coffin. They looked surprised because, inside the coffin, they did not find Zhou Dufu's skeleton but hundreds of gemstones of various colors. Shu Yorong suspected that Zhou Dufu was actually still alive and that Zhou Dufu's death had been just a fake story. After picking up some gems, Chang Shang and Shu Yorong found ancient writings about secret sword techniques that appeared on the coffin's walls. Since they didn't have much time, they decided to divide the tasks and memorize all the writings on the wall together to master the technique faster. Not long after, Princess Nanke and her troops arrived at Zhou Dufu's tomb and intended to attack Shu Yorong so that she could confirm that Shu Yorong was really dead this time. Because Shu Yorong's condition was weak, Chang Shang offered to fight against Princess Nanke to protect her. At first, Chang Shang looked difficult to deal with Princess Nanke's attack, but in the middle of the fight, a sword core from the sword pool fused with his sword. As a result, he has more strength to fight against her until he finally manages to make her cornered. On the other hand, Su Li also defeated the Black Cloak army even though his sword was not his real sword. Back to Chang Shang, who was miraculously able to summon various legendary swords from the sword pool so that he could defeat the pair of demon generals who had been accompanying Princess Nanke. Seeing this, she immediately controlled all the beasts in the place to attack him, but he could easily overcome the beast army with the hundreds of swords he had summoned from the sword pool. Seeing Chang Shang becoming stronger, Princess Nanke tries to unite her soul with a giant eagle creature to carry out the ultimate attack on him. Fortunately, Chang Shang was able to repel the attack with the core strength of the legendary sword and the power of the black dragon that had transformed into a golden dragon. Even though Princess Nanke had lost that battle, she still felt certain that Chang Shang and Shu Yorong would still die in that world because there was a mysterious power within the sword pool that was extremely difficult to control. And it turned out that Princess Nanke's words were proven to be true. All the pillars in Zhou Dufu's tomb began to crumble, and great storms began to arrive from all directions to create a great disaster in Zhou Yuan's world. At the same time, while Zhe Shu was running to avoid the calamity of the storm in the prairie, he realized that the calamity stemmed from the battle between Chang Shang and the demon clan. But he decided to leave that place and left Chang Shang to protect Qi Jian, who was seriously injured. After running for quite a distance, Zhe Shu finally found the main shrine gate, where all the students taking the grand exam were gathered. At that moment, a teacher and students tried to control the rainbow so that the gate of Zhou Yuan's world exit could be opened. Meanwhile, Chang Shang managed to stop the hurricane disaster in Zhou Yuan's world after he was able to restore the Heaven Book monument to replace the sword pool that had been damaged. Afterward, he asked a legendary bird to safely bring Xu Yorong out of Zhou Yuan's world. Meanwhile, he would try to hold back the falling sky so the other students could safely pass through the main gate. While holding back the sky with the sword net he created, the students started running towards the main gate to escape Zhou Yuan's world. As a result, all the students of the grand exam, including Xu Yorong, could sigh relief because they could safely escape from Zhou Yuan's world. But on the other hand, Xu Yorong, still worried about Chang Shang, tried to inquire about his whereabouts. However, upon investigation, her friend couldn't find a male student named Xu Shang because there was no such name on the list of great examination students. She couldn't help but surrender when she saw that the main gate was closed by one of the masters because the disaster in Zhou Yuan's world was too dangerous to keep the gate open. Meanwhile, a master from Li Mountain Academy suspected that the stab wound suffered by Qi Jian was from a sword belonging to one of his academy's students. Not long after, Liang Xiao, who was seriously injured, tried to scapegoat Zhe Shu and Chang Shang by saying that the two of them had conspired with the demon clan to attack Qi Jian. Zhe Shu, who happened to be there, denied Liang Xiao's accusation and said that it was Liang Xiao who had betrayed and intended to kill Qi Jian. However, because Qi Jian was still unconscious from fainting, Zhe Shu could not prove his statement, so the master of Mount Li Academy, named Zhou Tong, decided to detain Zhe Shu for the time being. On the other hand, Chang Shang suddenly teleported to the snow mountain where Su Li was. It turned out that the golden umbrella that Tong Tong had previously given was the sword belonging to Su Li, who had been missing a few years ago, so the sword accidentally brought Chang Shang to that place. After successfully recovering his original sword, Su Li could easily defeat all the demon generals in that place and thwart Black Cloak's plans. After that, he invited Chang Shang to leave that place and rest at a lake to clean the wound on his body. But not long after soaking in the lake, Su Li suddenly fell unconscious due to the many injuries he had suffered during the fight before. Chang Shang tried to treat his wound using acupuncture needles, and as a thank you, Su Li promised to teach him some sword techniques. At the same time, Black Cloak and his troops managed to find Nanke, who turned out to have survived the great disaster in Zhou Yuan's world. Back to Chang Shang and Su Li, who had continued their journey and stopped at a small town to buy some food at a restaurant. While Chang Shang was enjoying his food, Su Li suddenly threw his chopstick at him, causing Chang Shang to accidentally stab the restaurant waiter. It turned out that Su Li realized that the restaurant waiter had been sent by someone to kill him, which was evident from the sharp weapon that the waiter carried. When they returned to the forest, they had to hide from the Zhou royal army by using Su Li's golden umbrella, which turned out to be invisible. Su Li then explained that he had to hide from the royal troops because he had killed many people, so he had many enemies, including enemies from among the royal officials. The next day, Su Li and Chang Shang bought a horse carriage from someone so they could continue their journey faster. On the way, Su Li told Chang Shang about a sword technique that he could learn so that his sword skills could become stronger by concentrating attacks on the opponent's weaknesses. After mastering the sword technique, he asked Chang Shang to fight against Ling Hongzhuang, who intended to kill Su Li because he wanted revenge for the death of his parents. According to Su Li's direction, Chang Shang tries to find the opponent's weak point and concentrates on attacks on that point. As a result, he was able to defeat Hongzhuang easily. On the other hand, Mo Yu deliberately approached Master Zhou Tong to discover the progress of the interrogation carried out on Zhe Shu. Master Zhou Tong said he would lock up and torture Zhe Shu until he told the truth. But Mo Yu knew that Master Zhou Tong had lied and intended to force Zhe Shu to admit a mistake he had never committed. Chang Shang continued to learn new sword techniques from Su Li, and he was able to test all these new techniques on all enemies who intended to kill Su Li. When they stopped by a village, one of the village elders approached their inn and told about Zhe Shu. After hearing that Zhe Shu had been accused of being the one who stabbed Qi Jian, Su Li became worried about the state of Qi Jian, who was none other than his daughter. But not long after that, several other warriors appeared in the place and intended to harm them. Swordsmen from various regions, such as Xiao Zhang, Lin Changhai, and a royal prince, Liang Wangsun, have the same intention, to end Su Li's life. Chang Shang was forced to join the fight to help Su Li defeat his enemies in return for saving him from Zhou Yuan's disaster. Fortunately, he was assisted by Wang Po, who had previously met him during the grand exam. Wang Po then invited Chang Shang and Su Li to leave the village and head for Mount Li. But in the middle of the journey, a swordsman named Zhou Lo suddenly stopped them and intended to kill Su Li. Wang Po and Chang Shang tried to defeat Zhou Lo by attacking him simultaneously. However, because his desire to kill Su Li was too strong, Zhou Lo used all his strength, including asking for help from his friend, Guan Xinke. Fortunately, Su Li was helped by a mysterious, beautiful woman who had the power to trounce Zhou Lo and Guan Xinke. Zhou Lo, who seemed to recognize the woman, also asked why she seemed willing to help Su Li, a cold-blooded killer. The woman replied that all the killings committed by Su Li happened for a reason, and he did many good things, such as overcoming the hunger crisis without many people knowing. After hearing the answer from the woman named Nalan, all the swordsmen who originally intended to kill Su Li finally abandoned their plans and leave the place. That night, Nalan apologized to Su Li because she was late to help him on his previous trip. She explained that she was a bit stuck because she had to treat her student, Shu Yorong, who had been seriously injured by the poison of the sword. The next day when they were about to continue their wanderings, Chang Shang ordered Su Li not to kill anyone else. On the other hand, Shu Yorong, who had recovered, went to see Shan Jun tell her that she had fallen in love with a mysterious young man whom she had met in Zhou Yuan's world. Although Shu Yorong still didn't know the young man's real name, she was sure he was her destined match. Before Shu Yorong left to continue the series of grand exams, she said goodbye to her master, Nalan, who was with Su Li at the time. When he learns that Shu Yorong is also participating in the grand exam, Su Li leaves a yellow umbrella for her to hand over to Chang Shang. Upon seeing the umbrella, she finally learned that the young man she had met in Zhou Yuan was Chang Shang. Meanwhile, Chang Shang, who had arrived in the capital and returned to the Orthodox Academy, was finally greeted by Luo Luo. She apologized to Chang Shang because she couldn't do much to help Zhe Shu from the Li Mountain Academy prison. Afterward, he went to see the Pope of the Orthodox Academy to tell him everything he had experienced in Zhou Yuan's world and on the Snow Mountain. After hearing the story, the Pope ordered Chang Shang to take good care of the Academy's legendary sword from being snatched by others. Not long after, Yan the nephew of a divine general, created a commotion in front of the Academy gates and accused Chang Shang of being a traitor for conspiring with the demon clan. Apparently, Liang Xiao's lies had spread and created misunderstandings among the public. That night, Chang Shang went to see the sleeping black dragon and gave it some food in the black dragon soul container he had brought earlier. After he left the black dragon's place, the divine empress secretly took the black dragon's soul container without his knowledge. While Chang Shang was meditating in the middle of the night, he again saw the Heaven Book monument that had previously appeared in Zhou Yuan's world. He guessed that Zhou Yuan's world had not been completely destroyed, and a part of it still existed today. The next day when Chang Shang and Yan Po returned from the Tianjuling monument to pick up Tong Tong, Yan and his troops again made a fuss in front of the Orthodox Academy. Tong, who felt uncomfortable with Yan's actions, immediately kicked his chair so that he fell to the ground. On the other hand, an official named Zhou Gong is planning to get rid of Chang Shang because he is afraid that Chang Shang will be able to rival the greatness of his family and damage the reputation of his family. Hearing this, one of Zhou Tong's male students named Zhou Zheng said that he would challenge Chang Shang to a fight in front of many people so that he could humiliate Chang Shang. The next day Zhou Zheng went to see Chang Shang offer the challenge, and unexpectedly, he accepted the challenge. In the evening, Elder Mei Lisha and Priest Xu, who had heard the news of the challenge, asked Chang Shang so that he could win the match and prove his ability to everyone. Without Chang Shang knowing, that request would be the last request of Elder Mei Lisha because shortly after, she finally breathed her last breath. The next day, everyone started crowding in the courtyard of the Orthodox Academy to watch the match between Chang Shang and Zhou Zheng. Not many wanted to bet on Chang Shang because they were still doubtful and didn't know his abilities. However, after the battle started, everyone was surprised by his sword technique, which could penetrate Zhou Zheng's defensive circle. With the swordsmanship Chang Shang learned from Su Li, he figured out the weakness of Zhou Zheng's defensive circle and finally defeated him in a landslide. After that, Chang Shang, Tong Tong, and Yan Po went to Zhou Tong's place to pick up Zhe Shu, who had been detained for days. At first, Zhou Tong refused Chang Shang's request and asked him to hand over the release letter from the Divine Empress because Zhe Shu was detained on a fairly serious charge of conspiring with the Demon Clan. Chang Shang denied the accusations by saying that Zhe Shu had never made any deals with the Demon Clan, and he was sure that the arrest of Zhe Shu was not on orders from the royal side but Zhou Tong's own will. After hearing that, Zhou Tong could not make any further defense and had no choice but to release Zhe Shu. After he was released, Chang Shang was shocked by the number of wounds on his body and immediately apologized for making him endure all that torture. In the evening, when they returned to the Orthodox Academy dormitory, Chang Shang gave Zhe Shu some demon swords as an apology. Chang Shang also offered Tong Tong and Yan Po to retrieve some of the swords that he had previously collected from Zhou Yuan's world. A few days after the news of Chang Shang's victory spread, many swordsmen were interested in having a duel with the student from the Orthodox Academy. One of the warriors who insisted on defeating Chang Shang was a warrior named Muo Lone Ban, who was very skilled at using poison techniques. Fortunately, Chang Shang could still defeat him even when he cheated with an iron vest. The next day, Chang Shang, Yan Po, and Tong Tong went to the city center to buy a restaurant with the bet money from the duels that Chang Shang had won over the past few days. On that occasion, Chang Shang finally met Zhou Gong, the person who had sent several warriors to fight and defeat him. After successfully buying a restaurant, Chang Shang and the others received several challenge books from the swordsman. In the evening, while discussing in Zhe Shu's room, Tong suggested he open new student admissions at the Orthodox Academy. The next day, Priest Xiu posted an announcement about recruiting new students in front of the gates of the Orthodox Academy. With various attractive offers submitted by Tong, many young people became interested in enrolling in the Orthodox Academy until they finally accepted 600 new students in one day. At the same time, the Orthodox Academy also received hundreds of challenge books from swordsmen from various regions. Chang Shang and Tong began to collect data from all the challenge books and determine the suitable students to participate in the duel. The next day when the battle challenge began, Tong asked one of the new students of the Orthodox Academy who had previously received direction from Chang Shang to come forward and fight. Apart from new students, one from the Royal Academy, Su Moyu, also came forward as a representative of the Orthodox Academy. It turned out that he had decided to transfer to the Orthodox Academy because he didn't want to face Tong. That night, Chang Shang went back to meditating and sent his spirit to Zhou Yuan's world to find a girl named Chujian, whom he had previously met. It seemed that he hadn't realized that Chujian was the fake name Shu Yorong was using, so he didn't realize that Chujian was actually Shu Yorong. The next day, Chang Shang went to the Divine General's pavilion to inquire about the marriage agreement letter between him and Shu Yorong because he had not yet received a reply from her. The Divine General said that he would personally accept Chang Shang as his son-in-law, considering that he would be the next pope in the Orthodox Academy. Luo, who was secretly listening to the conversation, looked very sad because it turned out that she actually had feelings for Chang Shang. Unbeknownst to her, Chang Shang intended to cancel the arranged marriage with Shu Yorong because he had fallen in love with Chujian. The next day, Luo decided to return to Baidi Palace and leave the Orthodox Academy. After learning about this, Chang Shang went to Baidi Palace to meet her one last time while handing her a black stone as a keepsake. After he left, Luo couldn't help but cry, knowing that she would never be able to see him again. The next day, Chang Shang received word from Tong that currently, Shu Yorong had returned to the capital. He hopes that Shu Yorong understands why he cancelled their arranged marriage. On the other hand, the Divine Emperor and his wife seemed to happily welcome their beloved daughter, Shu Yorong. After returning to her house, she was happy because she could finally feel the comfort she had left for a long time. She asked her personal maid to prepare some blue lobsters to give to the black pheasant which had saved her from Zhou Yuan's world. However, because the restaurant that serves blue lobster has been purchased by the Orthodox Academy, many people cannot get blue lobster for free. The next morning, Shu Yorong sent a challenge letter to Chang Shang on the orders the Divine Empress had given her. The duel fight between them would take place in a few days, and many people were enthusiastic about the fight, so few of them placed quite a large amount of bets. In the evening, Chang Shang learned several martial arts techniques to prepare for the fight against Shu Yorong. From the information that Tong had gathered, Chang Shang knew about her prowess, where she had mastered high-level knowledge when she was 7 years old. After knowing all of her prowess, he became less confident in fighting her. Moreover, most of the people in the capital had bet on Shu Yorong's victory, and only the members of the Orthodox Academy supported Chang Shang's victory. But thanks to the support from Tong and the others, the day before the match started, Chang Shang managed to find a way to win the fight. On the day of the fight, everyone, including some royal members, started to gather on the city bridge to watch the fight between Chang Shang and Shu Yorong. As the fight started, Tong and the others started worrying about his condition because Shu Yorong seemed superior. However, in the middle of the fight, she stopped their attack after learning that Chang Shang was the young man who had saved her in Zhou Yuan's world. She then decided to give up the fight, so Chang Shang was declared the victor. Before Shu Yorong left the battlefield, she gave a scroll of letters to Chang Shang. In the letter, she invited him to meet at a seafood restaurant. The Donghua ends. The moral that can be learned is that if there are already two people destined to become lovers, they will eventually reunite even though many obstacles stand in their way.